during which the UK Prime Minister resigned. That wasn't my fault. Although, it happens again today, who knows? I was going to talk about the future of the economy. I made a note about that. But actually, so inspired was I by yesterday's discussions and this morning's, I'll switch topic and discuss instead imagination. Right? Imagination. And its link to the economy. Now, that should immediately set alarm bells ringing. I'm an economist, right? Economists aren't known for their imagination, right? I'm a government economist. Certainly not them. As Raj mentioned, 6 months ago, I swapped to join the Royal Society of Arts. Who's heard of the RSA? Good. Who's a fellow of the RSA? We'll have to work on that. So typically at this point in the conversation, I would say lock the doors, I bring out a baseball bat, and the lines, no one's leaving a till. But as it is, I'll tell you a bit about it. So the RSA, what is it? It's a social change organisation of 270 years almost standing. It grew out of the coffee shop culture of 18th century England, putting together people from all professions, of all walks of life, all cultures, a crucible of creativity, a cradle of creativity, a home for imagination. And from that, great things have flowed by way of social innovation, right back to the world's first ever mass tree plantation program in the 18th century, the world's first international trade fair in the 19th century, the world's first examinations in state schools in the 20th. The fusion of arts and sciences, that crucible of creativity. Promulgating non-best practice, instead cultivating next practice, which is the crucial bit. So what then is the link between imagination and the economy and society? And truth be told, those links could not be stronger. Look back at the arc, the evolutionary arc of our societies. The one defining feature of while that arc has been upwards has been the human capacity to imagine a different future, and crucially, to set about creating that future. What distinguishes Homo sapiens from every other animal on the planet? The reason we have been traversing the evolutionary superhighway while every other animal has been traversing the biological slow lane is our distinctive, unique capacity to imagine a different future and then to set about creating that future. And action is important. Imagination without action is called daydreaming. That does not make the world go. Imagination with action, that's called creativity. And that has been the wellspring of innovation and that evolutionary upwards path forever. It's also been the reason why societies have been able to rise to the societal challenges of the time, whether it's poverty or pestilence or disease or injustice or climate change. In Einstein's words, we will not solve the problems of today by using the same thinking that was used to create those problems in the first place. We need a leap of faith, a leap of imagination to do that. Who in the room is working on sustainability? Quite a few people. That's terrific. That is great, but it's not great enough. What the world needs right now is not to sustain where it is, but to regenerate where it is. It needs to replenish its stocks of human capital, social capital, natural capital. And that calls for next practice. Next practice is a regeneration game. And that begs the question, how is that to be done? How is that regeneration to be brought about? Our existing institutions up to the task of doing that? And I will conclude that they are not. We have had too great a focus on nurturing skills and being task-oriented in a way that's got in the way of nurturing the characteristics that make the mass flourishing. That is to say, imagination, and that is to say, creativity in its many and various forms. And let me mention perhaps 3 ways in which we build a different set of policies or societies that are actively nurturing of that crucial thing that has been the wellspring of mass flourishing in the past and will be in the future. And just on that, there are so many, given its importance to our past, its even greater importance to our future. Some strong misperceptions still exist about this funny thing called creativity. For many, it's felt to be an innate characteristic, something that's seized by nature, something that's specific to personalities or professions or to sectors. We have an industry called the creative industry. We have people who call themselves creatives. We employed morons back in England. I'd go and ask them a question. He'd say, "No, Andy, please leave me alone. I'm being a creative." Truth be told, creativity is not something that is set by nature. It is something that is nurtured, that can and should be actively cultivated. We know quite a lot now about what it takes to culture creativity. It comes from the opening up to different experiences, cultures, disciplines. It comes from the connectivity of people, that coffeehouse culture of 18th century England. It is the consummate team sport. It comes from the collective. When that creative had said to me, "Leave me alone, I'm being creative," I should have shot back, "No, you're not." That would come from talking to you. How is this to be done? Let me mention 3 areas where we could do much better. The first is to measure. What is not measured is not managed. We do not measure this thing called creativity. We can count the stock of economists in the US. We cannot count the stock of creativity in the country and indeed elsewhere. That needs to change. We need to record and reward this thing we think is the wellspring of mass flourishing. And not just that. There are many and various other invisible characteristics. Resilience, tolerance, green skills, regen skills. We need to record and reward in our lifelong learning logs. Second, education. 16 years ago, Ken Robinson, the British educationist, stood on stage at TED, the most watched TED talk of all time, and said, "Our schools are killing creativity." He was right then, he is still right now. Little has been done to fill the gaps. Our examination system are creativity killers because they lean against experimentation and failure. Our curricula fail to fuse together disciplines in ways we know that nurture creativity. Our colleges and schools bifurcate different experiences. We know that social capital is the wellspring of creativity. 2, and what is true of our schools is true also of our workplaces. We need a new social contract between employers and employees that recognises and rewards this thing called creativity in the workplace, where entrepreneurship counts every bit as much as entrepreneurship when driving forward our societies. And here's a controversial thing, something where we actually go back into our offices, because there is where those tacit learning, those serendipitous interactions happen, and creativity is itself created. That's an ambitious agenda. Rethinking education, rethinking how society keeps score, rethinking our workplaces. Nothing less than that is needed to rise to the challenges of our time. Conferences like this can do that. Institutions like the RSA can do that. Working in partnership with you at PopTech, I look forward to doing that in the years ahead. Thanks so much.
chairs here. Thanks, Andy. Really refreshing to hear about how you think about creativity, imagination. So one of the things that, as we were talking earlier, that came to mind is now you've shifted from this central bank role to the RSA role. How do you get people that you work with and collaborate with to move past sort of the dark, gloomy headlines that we sort of tend to focus on? Humans tend to be sort of very short-term focused. How do you get people to collaborate to solve real problems at scale, but they take a long time to solve? How do you make that happen?
No magic bullet, but I've got one idea. Actually, it's stolen from your industry, actually, which is venture capital, which is a behavioural nudge, and it's having every conversation start with the question, what could go right? It's a good question to start this conversation with, actually. We have a naturally risk-averse, sometimes even catastrophized mindset, particularly when the sky is cloudy. And flipping that mindset early on in the conversation and looking to the upper tail of the distribution of outcomes rather than the lower tail, I think it's crucial. In fact, asking yourself that question makes it also much more likely you'll end up in that upper tail. Because that is the essence of the imagination process. That having imagined that upper tail can then set about seeking to achieve it. So let's start by asking ourselves the right question, which is upper tail rather than lower tail.
No, great point. And certainly being optimistic is very, very important to going and trying to achieve what you want to achieve. I can't help myself asking you this, given everything that's happening in the UK. Love your thoughts on what you see happening, what's happening so far. What do you see happening in the UK, given some of the events of the past few weeks?
How have you got that? Well, I mean, look, here's the thing I can say with a degree of certainty, which is that there'll be no better than uncertainty. The only certainty right now is uncertainty. The only constant is change. I do think, rather than waiting for that to resolve itself, whether we work in the not-for-profit sector, in the government sector, in the private sector, don't wait for the clouds to lift. Because they might not. We've waited a long time. So now is the time to get on and make the investment, to make that change. Now it's easy said than done, but I think it's really important right now that we aren't calcified, we aren't petrified by the uncertainty. Indeed, we might even seek to lean into that uncertainty and view the opportunity in it to do things very differently. Actually, when I speak to many businesses, many local leaders, that's exactly what they're doing. And that's exactly what it's needed.
Great point. Well, thank you so much, Andy. We appreciate your time and your insights. Thank you.